Hey there, chemists. Today we're going to be focusing on strategies for searching the scientific literature. And I'm going to go through a PowerPoint presentation, introduce you to a bunch of different search engines, and then also go over the assignment for next week. So the way that we access the scientific literature has changed over time. And this image I'm showing right here is from the National Library of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro. And this is what I started out with, searching through stacks of library books in a physical library when we didn't have good access to digital documents. Thankfully for you all, that has changed. And while you're not privy to going to beautiful places like this, you do have mounds and mounds of literature at your fingertips through the internet. All right, so by the end of today, I hope you'll be able to use a variety of search engines and feel comfortable with these to find primary research articles. I'm going to show you a database called PubChem, where you can search using chemical structures, and then analyze safety information that's also presented in PubChem. All right, so when we're thinking about search engines, all search engines have some common functions. They allow you to search based on keywords or author names. And those include all of the search engines shown over here: Google, Google Scholar, PubMed, Web of Science, and then PubChem down here is a little bit different, but we'll get to that. Each search engine is going to have some sort of advanced search option. You may not think that Google has one, but it does, and you can access that if needed. All of them are going to allow you to sort and filter results based on certain criteria. And most of them will have some way for you to export citations to some other software. And then finally, most of them will have a feature where you are able to find related articles. Once you find one that you like, you could find others that are related to that topic. All right, so one of the search that we're going to use through all of these search engines is this one. We're going to search on keywords for mitochondrial DNA mutation in cancer. Our question here is, does mutations to mitochondrial DNA cause cancer? And then another analogous or another similar search would be doxycycline and mitochondrial effects. I'm going to stick with the top one for most of these demonstrations here. So let's take a look at plain old vanilla Google. And I'm going to switch over to my web browser here. So here we've got Google. And we are going to search for mitochondrial DNA mutation. All right, so here we get our search results, and we're going to see that we've got some things that look legitimate. You know, we've got results from a website called Cell. You may not be sure what Cell is. We've got something from the National Institutes of Health. Got something from Nature. We've got this one from eLife. So let's take a look at just this first one up here. And we'll accept all the cookies. There we go. And we can see that if we look closely, this is a review article on mitochondrial DNA is a major source of driver mutations in cancer. We can see that it has a publication date. It has a list of authors. This looks like a peer-reviewed review article. Now, if we go back, we're going to see that that's not the case for all of these results. We take a look at one more. Let's look at this one from Research Outreach. Okay, so this looks like it is a podcast from back in 2020. So with our Google search, our basic Google search, we're going to get a mix of results that are scientific or peer-reviewed and some that are not. And we have to be cognizant of that. So an alternative to the basic Google search is to use something like Google Scholar. So this would be a more dedicated or specialty search engine. So if we go to Google, and we're going to go back, and we want to go and find Google Scholar. The easiest way to do this, you can set up a link to it, but if you just type Google Scholar, it'll take you to the site. And it takes you to this basic looking Google search bar as well. But we can use Google Scholar to do some more advanced searching and filtering, things like that. So you'll notice up in the left-hand corner, you've got this kind of options bar up here. So we'll get to that in a second. I've got a profile that I've created in Google Scholar, which I would recommend that you all do. And then I've got another link for my library here. So let's just start with Google Scholar. If we search the same keywords, we're going to see that this list of results looks more like what we would expect to see from just journal articles. So we've got a list of names, we've got the names of the journals themselves and the publication year. For most all of these results for this particular search. We've also got these handy buttons over here where we can find the result at App State, or we can get the PDF or full text through the publisher themselves. So if I click on this Find at App State, we've got an article link right here. And we can now see that we've got the full text of this article here, and we can download the PDF. We can also export the citation, email it to ourselves, or print, do whatever we need to do. So that's great. Finding full text PDFs is great. One of the other things, so if we just click on a result here, it'll take us to the publisher's website, and there might be a way for us to get the full text through there. There's also this export citation option here, which is great. If we click on this, it'll take us down to the citation here, and we can copy and paste this, or we can download a citation. And it's showing up in my downloads. And it's showing up as an RIS formatted file. And when we're talking about different bibliographic software, I'll show you how to import some of these files and use them. Okay. So going back to our search results, great things that we can do in a dedicated scientific database like this is we can filter and sort our results. So we might want to sort, right now we're sorting by relevance, but we could also sort by date if we want the most recent publications. We can find any type of articles, or we could limit it to just review articles. If we want only things that were published this year, we can click since 2023 up at the top. So now we've got just review articles that were published in 2023. We can set up a custom time range as well here. So these particular filters are fairly limited. We'll see some more advanced options in other search engines. But one of the other things that we can do is, if we're not happy with the results of this basic search, we can come into perform an advanced search. And here you have more options like matching exact phrasing. You can filter out words, and you can do this in the basic search bar with some Boolean operators like ands and ors and nots. but this is one way to do it a little bit easier. You can search for keywords plus an author name plus a journal and a date range. So you can get very specific when you're looking for very particular articles. Okay, there are a couple other cool things with Google Scholar. If you click on one of the author's names and they have a Google Scholar account or profile, it'll bring you to their profile. And we can see that they have some really widely cited work, almost 10,000 citations for this particular paper. We can see their H index and I-10 index, which we were talking about last time. It's an indicator of how influential their work is. And we can also follow this author. So if you want to get an email every time that they publish something new, click on that follow button and you can set up an alert. Okay, so we've also got a couple of other cool things here. We can save these articles. So if you create a Google Scholar profile and I click save, it's going to save it to my library, and I can create different reading lists or different groups of articles, basically. So if I wanted to call this cancer and click done, it'll save it to my library. Other things we can do is we can get a citation for this. So we get citations in different styles, or we can export them to different software packages. The one we're going to learn is EndNote. We can see all the papers that have cited this paper. So far, this one's only been cited by one. So if we click there, it'll tell us this paper also cited the original work. And then finally, we can click on related articles. So if we found one that we like and we want to see what else is out there, click on related articles and it'll give us things very similar to the article that we just found. Okay, so there are a bunch of cool things you can do with Google Scholar. Don't be afraid to use it. If we go to my profile, it'll show you the same sort of thing for me. This is the profile that I set up. You can set up one. It doesn't need to have publications or anything in there. It's just a way for you to save papers, basically. So then if we go to my library, we'll see that I've got a whole bunch of papers already saved in here. And then the one that I just saved is right here. And if I click on my cancer reading list, it'll be just that paper. So some options for you for performing literature searches with Google Scholar. Okay, so the next database that we're going to talk about is called PubMed. And PubMed is a database that is focused on health-related topics. So it's run by the National Institutes of Health, and it contains literature that is both original primary research, but it also contains other related literature on health studies and clinical trials and things like that. So one of the terms that I want to introduce at this point as well is this DOI, the Digital Object Identifier. This is a unique identifier for any publication or web resource that will never change. It's always going to be the same. And if you know the digital object identifier for a paper, you can plug that into a web browser and it should take you directly to that resource. Similarly, in PubMed, they have their own ID system. So the PMID is the PubMed ID. And it's a unique identifier just for publications that are listed in PubMed. Similar to the DOI, but it is going to be distinct and is only for things that are in PubMed. What's cool about PubMed Central, and there are a couple similar repositories, is that this is a full text repository for federally funded research, particularly research funded by the National Institutes of Health. And what this means is that scientists are being forced or highly encouraged, required, I should say, to get their research out there in a format where anybody can access it. If it's being paid for by taxpayer dollars, it should be accessible by taxpayers. This is a requirement for most federal funded research. If it doesn't have something to do with like top secret sort of things or national security. And so the National Institutes of Health require this, so does the National Science Foundation, and they have their National Science Foundation public access repository. So if we look at PubMed, this is what a search result is going to look like, and I'll show you this in just a second. But one of the things we can do some the same things that we did in Google Scholar. We can sort by different criteria. We can filter by article type. It's sometimes easy to see the figures that are in a particular paper. And we can also do that, click on the author and see all the publications by that author. So let's go to PubMed. We're going to do our mitochondrial DNA mutation cancer search. Okay, and here are the results that we just saw on the slide there. So if we click on this first link, we're going to get the abstract of the paper. We get a list of similar articles. We see that it's a review paper published in Nature Reviews Cancer. And we've got other options over here. We can get the full text from the Nature Publishing Group by clicking on this link. We can get the citation. Again, we can copy that, or we can change formats, or we can download this .nbib file and import it into software that we're going to use. Like I said before, if we click on Piotr Kopinski's name here, it'll show us all the publications that Piotr has in PubMed. And along the, if we go back to our original search, along the side here, we have all of our different criteria that we can use to filter. So if we want things that were just published in the past year, we can click on there. We can also use this slider here to indicate which years we want. This is cool that we can see how many publications or how interest in this topic has changed over time. So starting back in about the 1970s up until about mid-90s, there were fewer publications, and then we see this explosion of interest in this area. We can limit our results to just free full text, which is probably going to be the best for y'all. And then if we don't want some of these article types, so there are things like systematic reviews, which is more like a review of clinical research. We don't necessarily, we're probably not interested too often in randomized controlled trial results or clinical trial results. But for the most part, we're going to be interested in those primary research articles and review articles. Okay, so the other thing that I mentioned with PubMed is that it's easy to see figures in the papers. And let me show you that particular function. So if we click again on our first hit here, we can see the PubMed ID that I mentioned and the DOI here as well. And if we scroll down a little bit, it shows us all the figures that were in this paper. So if I click on one of these, it'll show me a blow up of the figure. And that might help me figure out if this is something that is worthwhile reading. If I'm looking for a particular schematic or to understand a particular pathway. All right, so that's PubMed. And the next database that I want to talk about is the Web of Science. And this is really easy to access through the App State library. If you go to the databases and search for Web of Science or ISI Web of Science, or if you just use the link that's here in the PowerPoint, it will take you to the homepage for Web of Science, which should look like this. And we can search in two broad categories here. So if we're searching for particular documents or documents on a given subject, this is like the searches that we've been doing. So I can search on my keywords, mitochondrial DNA mutation cancer. Apparently I waited too long, so let me try that again. All right, so we get our search results here. Web of Science has a lot of cool bells and whistles. We can continue to filter by adding additional keywords. It gives us some suggestions up here for things we might want to consider. We see that we've got 3,676 results, so maybe this is a little too much for us to handle, and we want to continue to refine that. We've got our filters and sorting options over here, so if we just want to get at the most recent research, we see there's 132 papers from 2023. So if we click on that, and then maybe we want just review articles. And sorry, we have to click refine every time we select something new. So now we're down to 39 articles, and that might be a little bit easier for us to manage. If we just do the ones that are open access, that's even fewer. Now we're down to 26 open access review articles from 2023. We can see the researchers who are involved, and we might be interested in a particular group. And then we can come over here and look at the results. We can export these results directly to citation software. So things like EndNote, which we're going to be using. We could send them to Excel, or we can get those RIS files that we can import into other bibliographic software. But one thing we can do is come over and sort by a lot of different categories here. So this allows us to sort by a number of citations, which might be useful. So if we want the most highly cited review article from 2023 on this topic, it's not a lot. So we've got 5 citations for this particular review article. If we expand back out from 2023, so get rid of this this filter here, then we can see this article, Mitochondrial Diseases in Man and Mouse, has over 2,400 citations. So this might be a good one for us to start with. Looks like there are a lot of widely cited review articles here. But some of these are going back a ways. This is 1999, so maybe we need to say in the past, maybe we say after 2019 and we click all of these. And we end up with something with hundreds of citations that's maybe a little bit more specific or more timely on the state-of-the-art research. And another cool thing that Web of Science allows us to do is it can give us information about the funding agencies that that paid for this work. So if we click on any particular article and we scroll down, we're going to find this category called funding. I'll show you that. So let's see who funded. Let's not do review articles. Let's do some basic research. So get rid of review articles. And let's refresh this. And let's get rid of all of our filters. So the most highly cited papers are these review articles. And let's do just articles, not review articles. All right, so here we've got a highly cited paper about ROS generation in mitochondrial DNA mutations and tumor cell metastasis. So let's click on this and scroll down. Show us all the citations in the paper. And where's the funding information on this one? All right, I am not seeing funding information on this one. One other cool thing that we do see here, though, is it tells you the journal impact factor for the journal where this was published. So Science has a high impact factor. Can help us determine whether or not this is good or reputable publishing outlet. Let's try this one and see if they have funding information. Okay, so here we go. So if there is funding information published with the paper, it will be displayed down here. So this was funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the National Institutes of Health. If we want to see details on any particular grant number, it was also funded by another one, the New Jersey Commission on Cancer Research, U.S. Department of Defense. So I guess we have to scroll down here to see all of the funding sources. You want to see details on this. I guess there is not as much detail as I thought there might be, but it does show us who funded the work. So if we're scrolling through results and we see that this was funded by, Monsanto, a big chemical company, as opposed to the National Institutes of Health, we might have to interpret the results accordingly and look out for any bias in reporting the results. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the more specialty search engines or databases out there. So this particular database is called PubChem, and it is run by the National Institutes of Health as well. I've been told that you use this database in organic chemistry, so maybe this is going to be familiar to you, but maybe we'll use it in a couple of different ways here. One of the things that is available through PubChem are these GH, the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemical pictograms. So these kind of pictorial representations of hazards. So GHSO8 is the health hazard, and it has this little symbol of this silhouette crumbling into dust. And if we look up what this is, it may cause damage to organs or target organ toxicity from a single exposure. One of the cool things we can do with PubChem is we can take a structure of something that maybe we don't know the name of. So if anybody knows the name of this, bonus points to you. And we can do a structure search. So if we go to the database, you'll see that we can search based on keywords. So if I knew the name of that chemical, I could search on it. If I had a identifying number, I could search for it that way as well. But instead, we're going to use this draw structure option. All right, so I'm going to draw the structure of that chemical. I'm going to start with this six-membered ring. And I'm going to draw in the other bonds here. And we've got two methyl groups off of this carbon. And then we've got a double bond off of this carbon. Okay, so I've drawn this molecule, and now I'm going to click search for structure. If we had any other atoms in here, we could replace these guys. If this were an oxygen, Could put the oxygen on there, but we'll change that back to a carbon. And we'll search for the structure. Okay, and we come up with the correct structure here for, or the correct name is beta-pinene. In the result here, we get the common name. Sometimes this will be an IUPAC name, but in this case, it's a common name. And we get the next entry here is the Cas number, and we'll talk about Cas number on the next slide here. We get some other less common names as well. So if we click on this, we get a whole ton of information. If you just look at the contents tab on the side here, we've got 21 different sections of information that we can go through. One of the first and most useful ones is this chemical safe? We see that it's flammable, it's an irritant, it's a health and environmental hazard. And we can click on this link to look at the laboratory chemical safety summary data sheet. If I do that, it gives us even more information, but this is more specific to health hazards and toxicity. So we can use the navigation pane over here to go and look at, let's say we're interested in exposure limits. So the threshold limit value as an 8-hour time weighted average is 20 parts per million. And does it say what the exposure route is here? This is probably inhalation if it's in parts per million. Either that or it's like dissolved concentration for aquatic organisms. We can see that it's a food additive. This is one of the chemicals that gives pine needles their particular aroma. And then we can see all of the health hazards that are associated. It's irritating to our eyes, respiratory system, and skin at a given level. It's flammable with a critical temperature of 643 degrees K. It tells us how to store and handle this properly. It tells us what to do if there is any spill or if we need to dispose of it. And all sorts of good health and hazard information in this LCSS. We go back to the main PubChem entry. We can see all the different names and identifiers. So if we scroll down here, we'll see that Cas number, and I'm going to ask you about that on the assignment. Chemical and physical properties. So most useful here for a simple hydrocarbon is probably the exact mass, molecular weight. And if there are any spectra, so here we have an NMR spectrum. This is proton NMR. And we've got some other NMR spectra as well. We've got some mass spec data. So here's the mass spectrum for beta-pinene. We can also see who sells it. So chemical vendors, we can come down here and let's say we need to buy beta-pinene. We can find it at Thermo Fisher using this ID number. Let's see, going down to use in manufacturing, we can tell what it's used for. And we can also see how it is manufactured or synthesized if we scroll down, methods of manufacturing. So here it tells us it's isolated from American turpentine. Also created by conversion from alpha-pinene, which is another similar compound. So this is isolated primarily from natural products. We've got some safety and hazard information here in a more condensed form than you find on the LCSS. So this is a good place to start, but you're probably going to want to check that as well. Toxicity data. If there are any toxicological impacts. We'll find them in this section. So we can see that in some laboratory exposures, laboratory tests, that it shows evidence of genotoxicity down here. And under this section, the non-human toxicity values, we're finding a quantity called the LD50 for rats. And this is the lethal dose for 50% of a population of rats. So we take, 10 rats, we feed them a certain amount of this chemical, and we see how much it takes to kill 50% of those animals. And here, for an oral dose, it's greater than 5,000 milligrams per kilogram. So greater than 5 grams per kilogram. So this is not very toxic. You'd have to eat a whole lot of it to be harmful. All right, and then there are all these citations down here under the information sources. You can come down here to find more information about this particular chemical. Okay, so I mentioned these CAS numbers. CAS is the Chemical Abstract Service run by the American Chemical Society. And each chemical, every chemical recognized, or every chemical that we know about, has a CAS registry number. So this is a unique identifier for that chemical substance. So for example, stereoisomers that are almost exactly the same, but because they are distinct chemicals, they have different CAS numbers. Different phases of a substance, however, are not given different CAS numbers. So for example, water has the same CAS number as ice and as water vapor. These CAS numbers are great. So if you know the CAS numbers, so for example, here for isobutyl alcohol, this would be the label you would find on a bottle. And you see the CAS number here is 78-83-1. And if we know that number, we can plug that number into a search engine or at a vendor, and it will give us isobutyl alcohol every time, because that is the unique identifier for isobutyl alcohol. It's great for ordering, because if you've done any ordering before, you'll know that different vendors name things differently. But if you have the CAS number, you know you're going to get the product that you want. Okay, one of the last useful tools that I want to show you guys is Cameo Chemicals. And this is a product of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. And one of the great things that we can use Cameo Chemicals for is a reactivity predictor. So here is the home page for Cameo Chemicals. And we're going to do a basic search, but once we find chemicals that we have in our lab, we can add them to a list of my chemicals. And then we can check the reactivity of those chemicals to see if it's safe to store them together. So we're going to do a quick search here for acetone. And we found acetone. So we're going to click add to my chemicals. We're going to do a new search, and we're going to add isopropanol. And we're going to add that to my chemicals. And then we're going to do one more, and we will do ammonia solutions. And we're going to choose this ammonia solutions containing more than 35%, but not more than 50%. And we'll add that to my chemicals. Okay. And then we're going to click over on the left-hand side here. We're going to click Predict Reactivity. And we get this reactivity chart that says, and the way we read this is if we're interested in isopropanol, we're going to read across, and we see that isopropanol is not compatible with acetone. So, or we have to use caution, because if we're going to heat that solution, it could be explosive. The ammonia solutions, however, are compatible with both acetone and isopropanol. All right, so if we click on that box that says caution gives us a little bit more information. Reaction products may be explosive or sensitive to shock or friction. So even if we're not heating it, there is still an explosion hazard there. All right, so we might not want to store these two next to each other without secondary containment between them. We also definitely don't want to mix these without taking proper precautions in the laboratory. Okay, so the next search engine that I want to introduce you guys to is within a software package called EndNote. And this is what it's a bibliographic management software that we're going to be using this semester. And it is free for you to download right now. So if you guys follow the link in the PowerPoint, it will take you to the App State license for EndNote, and you will be able to download this. So I would like for all of you to please do that this upcoming week so that we will be able to use it in class next week. So when you download the EndNote software and install it on your computer, it should take you to a homepage that looks something like this. This is Dr. Christian's homepage, EndNote library from her personal use. But if I pull up my newly created EndNote, because I am not an EndNote user, I use a package called Zotero, which is free, which I can also show you guys at some point. It has less functionality, but it does not cost anything. So when you leave app, you would be able to have this. A cool thing about EndNote and other bibliographic software packages is you can usually export your library and import it into other software. Okay, so when you start up EndNote, you'll see a screen that looks like this, and this is your library. Right now, I have no references in here, but I'm going to start adding some references. So the search tools up here would search through your current library. But one cool feature of EndNote is if we come down along the side here, we've got this online search section, and we see PubMed, and we see Web of Science. So if we go into the PubMed section, I've already typed in my mitochondrial DNA mutation cancer, and we see that we get 3,373 results. So we can go through and sort through these. We could add some other search criteria to try and narrow this down. But once we find an article that we're interested in, so this next generation sequencing article, I'm going to click on that result. And we see over on the right side here, we get a little more detailed information on it. So we get the abstract. We get a link to the PubMed database, and we can go there for access to the full text article potentially. But once we're ready to import this into our database or into our library, we click on the little plus button up here. And you can see now my all references has gone from 0 to 1. And if I click on all references, it shows that paper that I just added to my library. So one of the other cool things we can do is if we right click on this and we come down to find full text, it will start searching for full text for this article. And we see now up here above the entry, we've got this little PDF button. And if I click on this and select open, it pops up in a window on my other screen. And if I bring it over here, I've got the full text of this article. So if the full text is available, you can get it through EndNote, which is handy. And then it's saved here with the article. So if I go back to my PubMed search and then I go and do some other things, and then I come back to my references, the PDF is still there and it's saved. And you see this little paperclip attachment next to that entry. So that's great. Most all bibliographic software packages have an option like that. A lot of them have a plugin, and EndNote has one of these plugins that you can use with other search engines. So if you found something through Google Scholar and you wanted to import it into EndNote, you can use a Chrome plugin to do that. And I'll show you guys that in a future lecture. But there are search tools within these bibliographic software packages. So please go ahead and download EndNote at your earliest convenience so that if you have any issues, we can troubleshoot those before class. Okay, so another thing that comes up a lot now when you're searching for scientific information, especially if you don't have a super or curated set of keywords, is you'll see results from researchgate.net. And I just want to show you guys what this is so that you know that while it is full of good information, it is not necessarily taking you to peer-reviewed articles directly. So you can use the link here to go to ResearchGate, and your homepage would look like this. This is my homepage because I have a ResearchGate account. You can set that up. It's kind of like social media for scientists. So you could think about it as more of like a scientific LinkedIn sort of option. So if I go to my browser and look at my ResearchGate homepage, there are some articles that have been suggested for me from my extended network. So somebody's reading about hydrogen peroxide production. And let's see, what else do we have here? Chronic health risk for Chinese adults through dietary exposure to a pesticide. But if we search in here, we can search for research. And if I just do it, our topic, mitochondrial DNA mutation, cancer. You can see it gives me some articles with full text. What we might also come across here is some things that are not necessarily articles. So if you see results from ResearchGate, people can post questions. So this person posted a question last month, how to assess significance of gene mutation burden in endometrial cancer data collected or collated from different studies. So they're asking how to do a specific type of data analysis. And if we click on this link, it'll take us to the conversation that occurred regarding that question. And some people tried to answer it for this person, and they may or may not have helped them out with their analysis. Other things that you might find are kind of compilations of information from various sources to answer a question. In that case, you're not getting the full text of the information that they're using to try and answer the question, but you're getting little snippets from multiple research papers or textbook chapters or things like that. And you have to weed through those and go back and find the original research. So just be aware that that's out there. They send a lot of emails. So if you don't like getting a lot of emails from social media, then maybe creating an account here is not for you, but it can be useful if you have particular questions or for connecting with other scientists. Okay, so the last database that I want to talk about is just the basic App State library search. So if you go to library.appstate.edu, it'll come up with this homepage. And if you use the app search tab, that is going to search through all of the databases that app has available. So this will include Web of Science, but it'll include PubMed, it'll include JSTOR, which is bigger for like humanities type research. So if you want a very comprehensive search, you can go and use the app search tool through the library. So the results from this might look something like this. So if we're searching mitochondrial DNA mutation cancer, we get 226,000 plus results because we are going to get things that are not journal articles. We're going to get popular news pieces. So we have to sift through this and we can use some of the refining tools to do that. So if I go to, I'm just going to open the library website. Okay. And we've got this app search. The website looks a little different than the snapshot because everything at app looks different now. But if we search on here for our search terms, all right, so now we've got 229,180 results. So you see some of these are from academic journals. We've got links to full text. We can use the Find at ASU button to find the particular result. Here we've got a conference proceedings. So this is from the 2016 ACM International Conference on Interactive Surfaces and Spaces. Might not be the most useful for what we're looking at. Let's see what other types of things we have in here. So it's mostly academic journals and conference proceedings thus far. Here's an ebook. See if we've got any popular news outlets in here. I'm not seeing any, but for other topics with less specific keywords, we might see something along those lines. So we can limit to full text options using the tools over on the left here. That didn't really do much. Got rid of 3,000 options. We can limit based on time. So if we want things in the last year, we're down to 46,000. And if we sources and types, if we want only academic journals, that'll bring us down to 45,000. But we've got all these different types that we can search from. So notice that we've got things included in here like news articles, magazine pieces, dissertations, things like that. So just be aware that this is going to cast a wide net and you're going to have to filter those accordingly. All right, so that is the last database that I wanted to introduce you all to. Again, please do download EndNote for going forward. I do want to touch on the assignment that is associated with this topic. So I'm going to pull up that document. So it is the literature search and comprehension assignment. And it's on the As You Learn site under September 8th. And it's going to be some reading comprehension related to the two papers that I've asked you to read. So you want to read the review article by Chen et al. On coronavirus COVID-19 detection technologies. And then you're going to want to read the primary research article about one of those technologies, the GlycoGrip paper by Kim et al. There are 5 questions, I believe, here about the, 4 questions about the review article. And then the next several are about the primary research article. Notice that this question number 11 is going to ask you, to go to table S1. So S1 is in the supplemental information, and you will have to download that. Then we've got using some of the search engines that we talked about. So specifically PubChem here, asking you to play around with PubChem, Cameo Chemicals, Web of Science down here, and then PubMed. So this is going to take a while. This is a big assignment. So please devote the time necessary to sift through those papers, be able to understand them enough to answer these questions, and then have time to also work with these specific search engines and databases. So this is going to be due, if I can pull up the syllabus. So the literature search and comprehension assignment is due on September 15th. So not this Friday, but the following Friday. And when I get back next week, I will see you for, we're going to be talking about using EndNote and doing some reference formatting. Just a final reminder, you are required to go to the seminar this Friday. If you cannot make it to the seminar, you are welcome to let me know and use one of these online seminars as one of your 2 that you can do for the semester. All right, let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.